What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today is Best Served Podcast 323. We're talking about the need for gender-neutral restrooms in the restaurant industry. This is Workplaces Worth Working, episode 10. You know that is such a fundamental goal of ours to create business models in an industry that's equitable, profitable, and sustainable. And historically, we struggle with this. We have a lot of work to do. It was said very well to me, and I think it's interesting and important for us that a restroom, if it has a door and hinges and closes behind you, then it is a gender-neutral restroom. It should and is. And so I believe that it is far past due that we adopt this idea. So much of restaurant culture is so heavily and rigidly gendered, from our greetings and our obligatory use of language and pronouns, from our uniforms, and restrooms play a huge part of that. So it's something that this month we wanted to really focus on, bring some attention to. You'll see content in multiple fashions, from video casts to audio to Clubhouse to TikTok videos, where we're going to be discussing this, unpacking it, because there's a lot going on here that we need to address and bring to the forefront. We're going to be talking to Kai Walsh from the Queer Umbrella, somebody who's been leading us a lot in our content output for Pride Month here in 2021, as well as Joe and Rach from As You Are Bar out in DC. So with no further ado, I'll bring Kai in. Kai, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Again, you've been a true inspiration to us, pushing us, challenging us at Best Served and the industry at large. We have to do better. We have to be better. So I want you to just introduce the Queer Umbrella, a little bit of the work that you're doing, and then kind of set the tone at a high level, set the table for us on what's happening for the queer community, the LGBTQIA plus community, when it comes to gendered bathrooms.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Kai Walsh. I go by pronouns they, them. I'm trans, mass, non-binary, and I'm a social entrepreneur and the founder of the Queer Umbrella. And so essentially the Queer Umbrella is an organization that aims to grow and connect LGBTQ leaders and really just foster more inclusive and diverse business practices and policies, and really just making the workplace a better place for the queer community. And so I think that this conversation is super important, especially in kind of the climate across the US. So in 2021, we saw over 135 anti-trans bills introduced across the country, and it definitely takes its toll on the queer community. And so I think it's really important to kind of think about why are we doing the things that we're doing, the way that we have gendered bathrooms. It's definitely a form of segregating, right, through gender. And I think a lot of the arguments are kind of invalid. And so I'm excited to just kind of talk about that and raise some awareness, especially as a trans person with my own experience. I think bathroom usage is something that really affects me every day, and I know it affects a lot of other people. And so, I think it's an important conversation to be having.
I appreciate it. I like the symbolism of you being in front of a nondescript door. I don't know if you planned that or not.
That may or may not be my closet. Yeah. I am out.
The symbolism is even stronger. I appreciate that. You challenged me as well, because there's an interesting dynamic. I mentioned how gendered restaurants typically are. There's an interesting thing, though, because real estate is such a hot commodity within our industry. There's a lot of non-gendered, now I don't say gender neutral, non-gendered restrooms, because they only have one restroom. And so they weren't doing it thoughtfully. They were doing it out of scarcity and necessity, and we have to shift the mindset. So I want to set the tone for that a little bit. You mentioned 135 bills. I want to bring in Joe and Rach now, who are out in DC. Joe, Rach, good to see both of you. I appreciate both of the flags. You have, the symbolism is strong today. I appreciate that. A lot happening in DC. We are recording this, and then you were out the door to go support your community. Before we get into kind of some of what's happening in the gender neutral bathrooms and restrooms, just let people know a little bit, As You Are Bar, what's it all about? What's the community that you're of service to?
Awesome. So I'm Joe. I use she, her pronouns. And As You Are Bar is about everyone, And by that I mean everyone who's poor, everyone who doesn't drink, everyone who's not old enough to go to safe spaces. It's about inclusivity, and it's about, for us, we're building it with the community, which means we don't know everything, so we're reaching out and getting feedback, which plays really well into what you're talking about, because I sit in the privilege of being femme and fairly passing in my queerness, and so to talk about gender neutral restrooms, or I actually really like non-gendered. That's great. I'm going to definitely start using that. But to use that language and to think about that is me stepping away from my privilege and recognizing if I'm going to be a leader or run a space that I want to call safe and inclusive, that includes keeping these kind of things at the forefront of my mind. I also happen to partner with somebody who is masculine presenting, and
yeah. So I'm Rach, and I use she, they pronouns. I am genderqueer, which is a new revelation for me per a conversation with a non-binary human in a restroom.
More symbolism. It is rich today. I appreciate that. As a storyteller, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of terrible experiences with restrooms. I think, like Joe said, as far as you are bar is concerned, we know we don't know everything, and we really want to make sure we're getting the voices and meeting the needs of everybody in the communities that are the LGBTQI community and the intersectional marginalization that happens within our community and in the ways that we don't live and can't understand. So that's a priority for our bar.
I appreciate that. And, you know, we're all learning, and this is such a exploratory process. As somebody who has been the chef of the toxic cultured restaurant, has been the owner who didn't understand the responsibility and accountability that I actually had, has been culpable in so many things, that a lot of my job is to tell on myself and to find people who are actually thinkers, who are creating new and safe spaces. Because just even yesterday, Kai and I were on a Clubhouse, and we were talking about DEI, inclusivity in the workplace. And Ajayla Abdullah, an amazing queer cheese maker and cheese lover in Chicago, said, I'm actually thinking a lot about DEII and that intersectionality being another layer where she often felt other because she was Black first and then queer second, or right. And so there's this dynamic. So now we're shifting our language and expectation. And so I appreciate that. I mentioned the tone and to be very kind of breaking news with what's happening today. You mentioned you're running out the door to go support your community in DC. Tell everyone what's happening for anybody who may not be aware, and more the impact that it's having on you specifically, because I'm sure they can watch CNN and find out what's happening. But for you and your community, what's going on?
Sure. So we have a local, long-standing gay bar called Nellie's Sports Bar. Has many accolades over the years, very nationally known. I actually used to work security there for a time, left because of the issues that they're having now were arising, and I couldn't be a part of it. So recently they had, like, what was that? Saturday, they had a security guard drag a Black AFAB human down their stairs by her hair because they had suspected her of having an outside bottle in the bar. Inappropriate on all counts forever, no matter what, bottle or not. Turns out it was a mistaken identity, which is more microaggressions. It wasn't actually even her that had brought the bottle. And if you had a bottle in the bar, it's no reason to get dragged out. There are very few reasons anybody should ever be dragged out of a bar. And obviously the community is upset and protesting. We have a gentleman named Preston Mitchum in our community that is amazing. He does correspondence. He's a lawyer but he does correspondence for a lot of news stations, kind of leading the protest. He has actually for years been boycotting Nellie's. And so he's already ready for all of this.
So ultimately the whole community, the line has basically been drawn. And so I think in COVID, we all learned where we were spending our money a little bit better. And so we feel the responsibility as owners to speak out and speak up. And we are always going to show our faces and lend our voices and signal boost as we can. And I think it's important, right, but DC as a whole, this is what everyone is talking about.
I think it's also important to note that as queer bar owners, this is already a marginalized community, so we do like to stick together and support each other, and it's part of that. And I often say one of the most loving things we can do is hold each other accountable, and part of that is absolutely holding them accountable for their continued challenges around racism and anti-Blackness. And so there's been a lot of questions. Are the other gay bars in the city going to say something and speak up and kind of denounce this and separate themselves from this kind of behavior? And so I think we're starting to see if that's going to happen. We just issued our statement moments ago because we've been working diligently for the last 2 days. And I think that that's just important to note. Even in marginalized communities, we have to call these things into question. We have to challenge these places if they refuse to change. We have to say, look, we separate ourselves from that, and we're, that's not us. That's not how we're going to support and love and live in this community.
Yeah, I could really appreciate that. So, Kai, I want to come to you for a moment, and then I want to talk about Joe and Rach. As soon as you run out the door, go to the bar and start, supporting the community in the way that you do. I want to talk about what the expectation is with your restrooms, because you have restrooms there, and how you've approached that. I'd love to learn from that. You mentioned something that, Kai, I want to bring to you, is where we choose to spend our dollars. And Kai brought up some numbers to me of the buying power of the queer community, and how many businesses, especially in food, beverage, and hospitality, are sleeping on it and not understanding that not only are there tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of potential talent pool for restaurants that are now seeing a labor shortage, big air quotes, right? Culture shortage is what they're seeing manifesting as labor. The dollar amounts. Kai, break that down a little bit. You mentioned some numbers that were just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So the buying power, the global buying power of the queer community, right, is $3.7 trillion, right? And so also, I think that's the important thing to say is, like, this is not a call to action for all food and beverage industry people to just, start capitalizing on this incredibly powerful consumer segment. Like, no, this is definitely a time where, if you market to us, we need to be involved, not about us, without us, right? We need to be in decision-making, like, positions of power. We need to be fairly compensated. Like, there's so much more. The expectations are so much higher in 2021, which rightfully so, because excuse my language, but what a shit show of the last 2 years, right? And
Absolutely.
Especially for queer community already isolated, and then on top of that, the impacts of COVID and what it's like to be in a house where you can't express yourself the way you want to because of your family, or fear of getting kicked out. The homeless kids, they're 120% more likely to experience homelessness, LGBTQ youth, right? And yeah, so I guess, when we're just talking about, like, sorry, I did go on a bit of a tangent. Do you want to bring me back really quick?
I feel you. Look,
yeah,
Kai, here's what I want to say. You don't just get to sell the fucking Pride t-shirt. Okay. You need to actually invest time, effort, thought into this. You need to actually cultivate community, not use it as a buzzword that you put on the wall and graffiti to look cool. Right. Exactly. And that takes work. It's hard. And again, you have to recognize some of your own culpability. The facade is getting burned down from our industry. And if a place like gender neutral, non-gendered, I'm going with that too, Joe, non-gendered restrooms is a place that you can thoughtfully start that conversation of gendered uniforms, I think, is another big place, and of language. You start there and you start to prove to yourself, your team, your community, your business, your industry, and the queer community that you actually give a shit. Then you have a chance to start to cultivate internally and externally guests that can amplify your message, amplify your business. So I really want to make sure, throw down the gauntlet. This is not selling the t-shirt and giving 20% of it to the queer organization that you Googled last week.
I tell straight people often who are interested in allyship, I'm like, listen, putting your pronouns in your email address and your email signature, that's a small thing.
Game changer.
But that's going to start conversations, and we offer ourselves as resources, particularly in our anti-racist work, to white people, because stop asking your Black friends to do emotional labor for you. You carry a computer in your pocket. And if you're not comfortable like Googling things, if I don't know, I can help you find out, right? Like, and I think that pronoun usage in my cisness and that privilege for me, putting my pronouns even in my day job email, making sure that signature has that, so it starts answering those questions. Because when people roll their eyes when you ask their pronouns, they're like, oh, I'm like, no. This is why this is a problem.
And it's also, I mean, the people that get asked their pronouns and the humans that are trying to do better when they ask pronouns initially, they're asking the people that they have questions about their gender, right? They're not asking the person that appears femme and AFAB, who could also be non-binary or use he, him pronouns or whatever. Then that we're not really doing it. We should be asking everybody, because we don't know what non-binary people dress like, look like. We don't know what are men supposed to look like, what are women supposed to look like. So I think that when people like Joe, people that pass, that are cis and identify as they express, start doing that and normalizing that conversation, it's just a game changer, and it takes a lot of the burden off. Kai, I feel like we can relate off of us.
Yeah, no, seriously. And bringing it back, just a little bit to kind of, pronoun usage in the service industry, like as a consumer, right? It's definitely something that gets a little dicey. Like every time it's kind of a toss up, and nobody's like, hey, what are your pronouns? Like you have short hair, you've got a little bit of an androgynous feel, like literally just asking. And it's so beneficial, and especially for queer customers who come, like I remember every time that someone who was serving me like asked me, hey, by the way, what are your pronouns? And it's an incredible feeling, and it's a feeling of euphoria. It's like I feel seen, and that's something that we haven't had for our entire lives, right? And so then, especially it gets tricky when you misgender someone and then you have to go to the bathroom, right? And especially if they have gendered bathrooms. And so a big thing that I think is going to be interesting, a little background on this in Denver. In 2016, they passed this like law regulation that if you had a single use, like single occupancy restroom facility, then you had to change the signage to gender neutral, right? And I think that was an incredible step for Denver, and especially given our history, and like one of the worst bills that we've seen in North Carolina, the House Bill 2, enforcing that people, this was in 2016, and enforcing people to use the restroom of that corresponds with the gender they were assigned at birth, right? And so how are you going to check that, right? Because there's gender expression. And I remember having so much anxiety about this, right? Because it's like, well, I've traditionally used the women's restroom, and sometimes if I get misgendered, it's the men's restroom, and it's just this weird toss-up. It's really hard to decide, like, where will I be most safe, right? And I don't know, and I think that's
just gotta go to the bathroom. That's like natural.
It's a human necessity, right? Yeah, and so I think that's going to be our next big thing, is like what the QU is working on, the Queer Umbrella. We're working on essentially transforming multi-stall restrooms into gender neutral, right? Because if you think about it, right, there's, I won't go on too much of a tangent there, but if privacy is your argument, come on, like bathroom design has
a lot of links and resources. We're big on links and resources. That House Bill 2, let's make sure Sophie will drop that in, because I think people need to be aware. I think people saw it at a distance, but so many people glazed over and said, "Oh, North Carolina is doing Confederate white people stuff," and it was like, okay, here we got to get you out of here, Joe and Rach. Rapid fire. non-gendered, gender-neutral restrooms for people in the hospitality industries, owners, operators, managers. Throw at us. What do we need to be doing? What do we need to be thinking about? What do we need to be shifting in our mindset, our approach, our policies? Rapid fire. Hit us with everything.
I'm going to mostly let Rach answer this, but one thing I want to say is we have to stop othering off the binary humans. Like, for a while there were jokey signs that it was like the stereotypical, the rectangles, the triangle, and then like an alien, like we don't care, just wash your hands. I understand that there's some good intention there, but the impact is you are other, you are an alien, and that's not funny. That's funny to privileged people. So there are urinals in this restroom. There are stalls in this restroom,
Yeah, I'm big on being impeccable. I think transparency and being impeccable is awesome, and I think it lands really well, and I think it's actually kind of sexy. And so when you have a restroom and you're like, urinals, stalls, toilets, standing, seated, we know exactly what's going on in there, right? It's clear what the intention of the use of this space is. So yeah, one of the places that we I think would really like to model our setup after is Busboys and Poets. It's a local restaurant here in DC. They do a great job. They have stalls. It's not even a door. It's just an open gap in the wall. You walk in, there's stalls for everybody, and then there's a big long sink, and everybody's just in there. The open gap is nice for the people that are probably struggling with this shift, because then they don't feel like the door's closed behind them and they might be in there with somebody that's not exactly like them. So it's kind of an easy first step, I think, for people that are uncomfortable with that. So that's kind of how we're going to be modeling our restrooms in our location.
Stall doors there, it's key to note, go all the way to the floor.
Yeah.
They're like actual doors.
Closed room, yeah.
So it's like you're in a little single use.
Yeah, and I think, Joe kind of hit on this. This is a necessity. Like, people have to go to the bathroom. This is a survival thing. This is a physical body wellness thing. In my experience, when I got a little older and got let go of some of my shame around my gender expression, because there was tons of that, I felt like I was the problem and I was wrong for a long time. I realized in telling people, like going to the bathroom is a pain. I had a 4-hour drive from college to home, and I knew exactly what gas station to go to, because I'd go in, they'd give me a key, whichever one they handed me, that's the restroom I used. I knew and I never strayed from that. I only went those places because I was scared. I was alone. I was terrified of what would happen. And when I've shared those stories with people, and I have several, they're shocked. People that don't have that experience, they're shocked. They're like, wait, you have to think about going to the bathroom. I was like, yeah, when I'm going out for like an hour, I go to the bathroom before I leave, so I don't have to figure out where I'm going to the bathroom. If I'm at a restaurant and somebody's heads to the bathroom, I'm like, hey, let me know what those restrooms look like, single stall or what. She'll go with me a lot, just so I don't have to have that conversation with somebody alone. For a long time, I would get very scared, and I think this is hopefully helpful for perspective shift with people that have this challenge. I had to really shift my mind to realize that my presence in the women's restroom was a gift to all that got uncomfortable with my presence in that restroom, because people that use that restroom look like me. And while it was hard on me, and I had to find courage every time, and I had to literally give myself a pep talk to stand up to these people that were going to challenge me, when I got done, I was like, now they'll think differently when they see somebody that looks like me. And the more this happens, the more they'll change. And so my presence today was a gift, even though it took a lot of energy and courage on my behalf. And that really helped me shed some of my shame.
And I think, for coming back to industry, and I'm 16 years in this industry in DC, and I think we can live in an echo chamber. It's easy, and I think it's really easy for people with privilege to live in that echo chamber and never consider. We literally just did a pop-up that there was 2 restaurants, because our brick and mortar is still in progress, so we did a pop-up, and they had 2 rooms. I saw the W and thought water closet, because that's been a really common new way to put signage on restrooms. And a trans man came up to me at the bar and was like, so I went to the men's room and it's all urinals, and I'm a man who doesn't use urinals. And I was like, my privilege is that I didn't even look in the second room.
Right.
So, and all you can say is, Thank you so much for holding me accountable, and I'm so sorry it won't happen
And then
again.
all you can do is next time we have that pop up, we will change the signage on those doors because immediate changes in need, you know?
Yeah, so I think for owners, you have to think outside your echo chamber. Lots of people are gonna be like, you're doing such a great job. I'm like, well, yeah, I gave you a free entree because you're my friend and you came in to support my business. Okay, so who is not your friend? Who's not coming in and why? Like, shifting your perspective is not that hard. It's everywhere. In media and social media, like, we have the opportunity to do better in front of us. So you have to look at it from a different perspective. If I was younger, what would this look like? If I wasn't able-bodied, what would this look like? The pieces that we missed out on are the pieces that don't affect us, and that's why our busted-ass society is where it is because we're not thinking outside of our own comfort.
And I want to throw it back to you, but I also want to say I think it's really important to say that people that have to change their language and are learning and stretching and don't want to are like, oh, it's so hard, blah, blah, it takes so much work. It takes me a ton of work to relieve myself in the restroom daily. Yeah. So you can put in a little work.
Yes, put in some effort. Like, this is not an adornment to a nice night out. This is a necessity of human survival that we are putting in. Rach, I'm so grateful for you for sharing that. And as somebody who hasn't had to deal with that, I appreciate that now. Like, I need to understand, and we're an industry built on asking questions. Why the fuck can't we ask more questions that lead to better answers?
The people who staff our industry are like, creativity lies in the margins. So our people who are working in this industry, by and large, you have a gender nonconforming person on your staff, and you don't know it because they do that work every time they use a restroom.
And they're afraid to say it because it could cost them a job or respect.
Of course, yes. All right, Joe, Rach, we got to get you out of here. You got work to do.
Thank you.
Appreciate both of you for the work that you're doing, for being on, for sharing with us. So important. We will stay connected for sure as our team, the industry has to learn from the two of you and so many others that are doing this important work. So appreciate you. We'll get you out of here. Kai, hang on for a minute. We'll wrap this episode, but two of you get out of here. Appreciate you.
That for your emotional labor, your work with your organization, we're going to connect.
Absolutely.
We gotta
Good to meet you guys.
Thank you so much, y'all. Happy Pride.
See ya. Happy Pride.
All right. And shout out to Erica Rose and the team at the Lesbian Bar Project who connected us, who, as you are, is featured in the work that they do. So we'll make sure that that's linked up as well. Kai, I mean, this is such important work that's happening. It's not happening enough places. It's not happening fast enough. But there's this inkling that there's shifting tides. Yet it feels like every time there's movement forward, there's 135 bills that are trying to oppress such an important segment of our community, and such like integral restaurants and bars and nightlife. They would be nothing without the queer community. Nothing. I think of so many spaces, neighborhoods, the hip, vibey areas. You know who built those areas? It was artists. It was the people on the margins. It was the freaks and the geeks, and it was us outcast chefs, and it was the queer community. And that's what we need to celebrate, because you sure as hell like going to those areas and consuming that entertainment or that deliciousness. You need to put in the effort that was put to create that opportunity for you. So parting thoughts, last note. This was a really powerful episode. And I'm grateful for you for pushing us and challenging us to do better and communicate in a new way.
So I could go on literally forever. This is something I'm so...
And Kai, you should and will forever.
I absolutely will, until, across the US and then globally, we've figured some things out. But I think, honestly, I think it's really important to look at kind of the trends in the history and the context of where we're at, right? And understand that bathrooms, segregating and gendering bathrooms, right? It started in the Victorian era, and it essentially was to separate men and women, right? And like, men were in the public life, women were in like private domestic life, like staying in the homes.
Sure.
And, and so I think it's really important to know that that's actually the course that it's taken. And it's, I don't know, we start to think like, okay, modern day, actually the design of bathrooms in general have absolutely like let us down. And, you know, there's a lack of privacy, you know,
Yes.
the design, yeah, the design has already failed before all of this anti-trans legislation. And so, you know, the urinals, like there's rarely you know, dividers or anything separating it. You see the stalls, there's huge gaps below and
Yeah.
above. And so if you're saying that, you know, that it's just important to recognize why we're saying this, and it's out of fear. It's this fear of the unknown. It's, you know, it's fear of not knowing who trans people are and having this kind of portrayal in the media that trans people, you know, it's perpetuated that trans women especially, right, are men dressing up. And then you know, it increases the violence and the risk for trans people as they become more
Absolutely.
visible. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just important to know that, in fact, in claiming that it's safe, I don't know, it's incredible. And we're going to see so much of this because we see millennials, we see Gen Z. People are feeling safer to come out and be themselves and live authentically. And 1 in 6 Gen Z people, they identify as something other than heterosexual, right? So we're gonna see, like, we're getting rid of these binaries. We're like, you know, fucking with gendered norms, and
Let's go.
yeah,
I
we're
think,
gonna turn it on its head. So saddle
look,
up and get ready. You
there's a
know?
lot of like air quotes kids these days, you know, that they're not this, that they're not that, and you hear this, and you've heard this for generations. I, for one, in our industry specifically, as a father and as a human at large, I am so grateful to kids these days, always and forever. That's what I'm working everything. I'm trying to get an industry worth that my kids can be the 6th generation of chef and restaurateur. Currently, we got a lot of work to do. Kai, I just want to say for you, like, you are not a trans, masculine, non-binary, they, them thought leader. You are absolutely a thought leader, full stop. And this is what we need to pay attention to, that the people right next to you, the people that are part of your community, are the ones that have the knowledge, the experience, good and clearly some horribly traumatizing as well, that can guide us into a better future. We just have to pay attention. We just have to ask better questions. We just have to care and put in a little bit of effort. So I appreciate it. We got a lot of more work to do. Lots more content. You'll be seeing Kai all over the place, as Kai is somebody, again, who is leading the thinking at Best Served. Absolutely. And we appreciate you. So Kai, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And we'll talk again soon. All right.
Oh, thank you, Jensen. All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye. Cheers. Have a good one. All right, everybody, that is a wrap for this episode. Powerful episode. I'm grateful for the opportunity to hold this space for such leaders and thinkers and people that will absolutely be what we need to evolve this industry. And as somebody who needs to ask more questions, you know that is what I'm driven to do, because I don't have answers. I just hope that I have good enough questions and find people that have the experience and are willing to put themselves out there, like Joe, Rach, Kai absolutely are. So thank you to the guest. Again, Best Served Podcast 323, the need for gender-neutral restrooms, non-gendered restrooms, and so much more. Workplaces Worth Working, episode 10. You know how important this series is to me. Appreciate you all. I hope that all of you have a great day. Do not have an experience where you feel oppressed and labeled as other. And if you notice somebody that is, please reach out to them. Please support them. They may be working right next to you. That's it. Thank you all. Cheers.